Well, thank you once again for joining us. Sorry for the 1 week delay. As you might have seen in the announcement, there was a rescheduling of the golf tournament that makes parking a real issue. So today was a much more convenient day for all of you in terms of being able to access the parking lot. Very big thank you to the Sanford Vern Previs Medical Discovery Institute for the use of their auditorium. It is certainly a nice facility that they allow us to use for free, and we hope that that can continue. The IPCSG principles, as you see here, we are still looking for a president, though I am standing in as the president pro tem at the moment. We also have Jean Van Vliet, our director, Bill Manning, a director and videographer, John Gottlieb, our treasurer, Steve Pendergast, our secretary and newsletter editor, who we will be hearing from later today. John Tassi, our webmaster, who's been doing a ton of work in the last week. And Bill Bailey, our librarian, outside setting up all of the books. And of course, there's you, 900 plus members, and everyone can be a volunteer. You can be too. Do we have any newcomers today? All right, did each of you get a newcomer packet? Okay, if you would, please fill out that cover sheet and return it to me up here at the podium. That information kit has a lot of information on articles and booklets that would be useful in your recent diagnosis and trying to answer any questions that you have. And with any luck, you will also get a personalized welcome call. We're kind of between people that are doing hotline calls at the moment, but what we intend to do is connect with you one-on-one, perhaps even just come up and talk to me, get some one-on-one at the end of the meeting, if you would. Going to go back to doing our survey. Now, in the next couple of slides, these surveys are really useful, especially for the newcomers and the people that are starting to make decisions about new treatment. It will help you look around the room and say, oh, these are people in similar situations to me that might have experience in the treatment that I am now considering, that you can go up to and ask questions of. And hopefully get a lot of your questions answered today. So as we saw, we have, I think, 2 people here for the first time. How many people have been recently diagnosed? Perhaps haven't started treatment yet? 1 here. How many people have had PCA for less than a year? The diagnosis, but less than a year? 1 to 4 years? All right, a few more. 5 to 10 years? No. A few more. 11 to 15 years, few more, and longer. You have some gentlemen that you can see have been battling this for a very long time. And the key thing about that is to realize is that for you newcomers, you have a long life ahead of you with proper treatment. And in terms of a treatment summary, now I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. How many have had active surveillance or on active surveillance? Yes. How many have actually had surgery? Okay. How many have had proton radiation specifically? Okay. Specifically proton radiation. All right. Because what we're realizing is that some people want to come up and ask you directly, such as this gentleman here. He's considering proton therapy. He has some questions. Please come up and approach him directly after the meeting, and if you would like to share some of your experience with him. Who's had other forms of radiation, whether IMRT, SBRT, so forth. And then how many actually have had salvage radiation?
What does that be, protons?
Well, it could be either. Because salvage radiation is you had surgery, but you had some type of recurrence. And really, you could also have adjuvant radiation, where it's more of you don't officially have occurrence, but you had positive margins during the surgery, and then they continue to do radiation. So I had exactly that.
Was it a salvum?
Yeah. Adjuvant salvage, I think that's the same thing. I can't remember now on the spot. How many people had ADT after surgery? Very- Yeah, so that's a very common thing to do after surgery if you have a recurrence, so forth. Do we get all the questions answered that you wanted?
Yes, well, screw you. Thank you very much.
Great, great. How many had chemotherapy? Nobody. Steven, I thought you had chemo. No, I'm trying to stay up there. Okay, all right. How many have had new treatments? Focal, which includes HIFU, laser, cryo, Tulsa, all of these type of focal therapies. Only 1% today in that. How about new treatments such as immunotherapy, Proven, Xofigo, Pluvicto? Again, not as many. Those are the people that are probably already in the clinical trials, so they know what the subject is here today. How many people have had recurrence? Yes, and that's a big reason why a lot of us are here today to figure out what it is that they want as their future treatment. How many people are undecided on their future treatment? Quite a few. We are also going to have an upcoming online survey. Stephen, sorry if I'm jumping the gun here if you were going to mention something about this. The board has been working on a survey to help characterize our member base and see what you may want from this organization. It will also help us when we're coming up with putting together member roundtables to see what types of treatments people have had and if they are willing to come and share their stories. The tentative plan is that we'd like to do this online. You'd probably receive an email through the usual routes. Please do consider taking a few minutes to fill out that survey once we have it ready. And I know that there's a lot of concerns about HIPAA requirements and maintaining anonymity. We will try to be compliant with all that. And as such, we might for those particularly concerned about being anonymous, we might do a paper survey for those people at the next meeting, and we'll have those available. It helps us, of course, to do everything online so that we have all the data and don't have to do manual data entry. Our support to you comes in the way of the website, but I hope you have all experienced. You know what? Actually, before I go any further, do there happen to be any non-prostate cancer patients in the audience today?
You mean support people?
Yeah, I mean, I should have also said, like, who are the support people that were here? I intended to do that, yeah. Well, yes, thank you all for attending. I'm curious why not everybody has a support person sitting next to you, because everybody, of course, is welcome. But today's meeting is not necessarily only about prostate cancer clinical trials. And I did open this up to a friend of mine who runs a breast cancer support group. And honestly, one of the most reassuring conversations I had after my diagnosis and after my botched surgery was talking with people who had breast cancer. And so we will be hopefully adding to the attendees by opening it up a little bit more to other patients when the topic is particularly of interest to others. So back to this particular slide. The website, of course, huge amount of information listing in the meetings that are upcoming. You can see all of our past meetings on YouTube. Our meetings are usually on the third Saturdays of the month, but not in December. And there's the newsletter. Whether you can download it from the website just fine. You can receive it via email or by physical mail. Of course, we prefer to not spend the cost of mailing out the physical letter. So please do consider using the email approach. And we used to have a hotline, but as you know, with Bill Lewis passing away, he's not currently doing the hotline. Stephen?
Newsletters also will pick up.
Thank you. Yes, there are a number of copies of this month's as well as previous month's newsletters out on the table if you'd like to grab a copy. We are looking for a volunteer to help field calls to the new members, especially. and deal with email responses. We do get some inquiries directly by way of the website. We are months behind in addressing those and could use some assistance in responding to those. We are still looking for more dedicated volunteers to serve as understudies, including especially a new president. The people would be signing up meeting guests, whether it's for doctors, doing roundtables, etc. A backup meeting facilitator for me. I know we've already had one or two people offer to do that, but the more the merrier, so that we don't have to cancel a meeting at the last minute. Newsletter assistance, although we have also had people step up to help out with the newsletter, which has been great. And I said before, taking hotline calls. These jobs only take 2 to 4 hours a month of your time in most cases. So if keeping this organization running is important to you, please email me. I know I was saying before, oh yeah, come up and give me your information and so forth, and I was trying to write it down and keep track of it. But you know what? I think sending me an email, letting me know you want to be an IPCSG volunteer, that will help me and the organization out quite a bit. New volunteers are always welcome. Other support to you, as you've seen in the past, the inexpensive PSA test by Ulta. And I forget whether that's actually $21 or $30, but $40 now, okay? Either way, that is a very inexpensive way to get a PSA test, especially if your doctor is refusing to let you have one, which is less of a problem for people over the age of 60 and more of a problem for me and people younger than me that are being denied these tests still. There's the promise of genetic testing, which is free, no cost, and the YMCA with strong prostate cancer therapy ADT exercise program, which is rather intense. And any of you on ADT know the importance of maintaining your physical well-being. That is a great program. How many people attended the Prostate Cancer Patient Summit last week? Excellent, excellent. If you missed it, you can see my new best friend. I didn't get an invitation to watch the Super Bowl with him, but I can understand. And we actually do have the recipient of the raffle gift of the signed football in the audience today. Bill was lucky enough to win the prize. So really a fantastic program once again. And if you didn't attend this year, I will be advertising it again next year. I do recommend that you go. Now, our patient support group purpose is we share patient-focused experience on becoming your own case manager through informing, networking, and caring. We are a group of experienced participants, but we are not medical professionals, and any sharing by anyone of our group may not be a substitute for your medical counsel. And we do need your support. Mike and anyone else, if you could help out. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and therefore, donations are tax deductible. There's no medical or religious affiliations. Our largest costs include the website, advertising, mailings, YouTube, etc. So please do consider making a donation today. An alternate way of making a donation, the preferred way, is to send a check payable to IPCSG at the address that you see there. We also do have an online link via PayPal on our homepage of our website. Of course, the checks are actually preferred to avoid the PayPal discounts that they give themselves. Next meeting should be another exciting meeting. Dr. Lamb will be back. I think it's been a couple of years almost since he was here. He usually comes every year, but had some conflicts. Last year we couldn't bring him in. He's the research director at Prostate Oncology Specialists. He will be giving updates on the latest trials, testing, and treatment for prostate cancer. So it'll be coming next month. I highly recommend that you attend. He is a really high-powered doctor in the field. So great way to get your questions answered. And a whole slew of upcoming meetings. Next month, following month in April, we have Dr. McKay who'll be coming back and doing a Q&As. We've set up Dr. Bedrosian of UCSD Dr. McKay in April, Dr. Bedrosian in May. We've asked him to address different focal therapies. And we are still planning the exact date, but amazingly, in the last month, I've been approached by various nurse navigators of the different medical institutions here in San Diego, UCSD, Scripps, and Kaiser. One of whom also works at Genesis, although they changed their name. So she knows even quite a bit about the Sharp system. We're trying to figure out a joint date for all of those ladies to come in. And the idea behind that meeting would be, half of you might not even know who the nurse navigator is, how to use this person to navigate the system to get the treatment that you need in their system, to be able to set up appointments with various doctors if you want to have both a surgical as well as a radiation second opinion, even getting a second opinion outside of their own institution, dealing with insurance. This is a fantastic opportunity to learn a lot of the intricacies, especially if you want something complicated in terms of going amongst different systems. So I'm still trying to line that up. That will be definitely a meeting that's also of interest to other cancer patients. John.
Yeah, I just want to throw something into that. To me, this is just amazing news. I had the experience of having a nurse navigator help me to get a second opinion on my diagnosis.
What is a nurse navigator? Sorry. UCSD is unbelievable.
Nurse navigators are people, they're sort of the go-to person within a practice who can tell you, okay, here are your symptoms. Here are some thoughts about what our next step might be, that kind of thing. Or if they can help you set up an appointment. You might say, I want to get a second opinion. I've been told I need surgery, but I want to look at radiation. So is there somebody in the group that you represent who does radiation type prostate?
So you could call UCSD urology and get the nurse navigator, like make an appointment with them, or how does?
Well, my experience was in Genesis, and the Genesis nurse navigator was my go-to person. She would call me and say, how are you doing? Is there anything that you need that I can help you with? That kind of thing. Now, on the other side of that, and I know probably most of you in the room do business with UCSD. I do also. But in my mind, UCSD is this maze of people that you have to navigate in order to get to the one person you want to talk to. I don't do well at that. And I understand that they're a teaching institution and that they have a lot of interns and so on and so forth. But yikes,
Quick comment, if I may, real quick. UCSD, because they're so big and right next door, so to speak. I have UCSD as one of my PPO choices, and I have she's actually called a patient navigator, same thing. Unbelievable.
In the urology department?
Yeah, but she's got magic connections to everybody. I wanted to get a second opinion because I'm considering surgery versus proton therapy. She just, like that, got me a second opinion with another doctor. Probably another surgeon would be really hard to get into. So they're amazing. At UCSD, they're called patient navigators, but nurse navigator, whatever, say.
Use the wrong term here, so that's fine, but they are amazing.
Absolutely a great resource.
Okay, comments on video.
Well, I first had my therapy, I was a patient. That was all that mattered. No, really some great meetings after that that included her. And then all of a sudden it stopped. So I don't know if Kaiser is helping that anymore. Maybe.
Yeah, actually, it was Kaiser that was the first. So the Kaiser ladies were here last month, and they came up to me, and Dr. Monk was like, "Oh, you're Gina? We've been we've been emailing. And see, everybody at Kaiser knows Gina, right? Gina is the patient navigator. And she this way here. A month ago, or oh, this was years ago. Okay. Well, I know that Gina actually, like Dr. Mutt was like, Kaiser outsources all of their radiation treatment to UCSD, and so Gina is the primary person for getting that, greasing those skids, getting that figured out. So these are definitely the people that when you're running into problems of like, I can't get a message back from this doctor, or I had an issue with Genesis where I wanted a second opinion on should I do radiation instead of surgery. And they said, okay, fine, we'll cancel your surgery just so you can go and talk to a radiation oncologist. Like, no. These patient nurse navigators, they are the people that will make sure that those problems get resolved.
Will they be conducting this meeting?
Yeah. That's my hope. That's my hope. And looking, potentially for that meeting, we might submit some various questions ahead of time, even like a month ahead of time, so that they can help tailor presentations. I'm even hoping that they learn amongst each other, and benefit from each other, getting insight into each other's systems. So, okay, I want to move on, but I think that's going to be a great presentation. For today's meeting, we do have Stephen Pendergast, our director and secretary of the IPCSG. He's going to be giving a prostate cancer clinical trial overview, as well as Teresa Gallagher. Where did she go? Just step back. Okay, she'll be back in a minute. She's with Sparrow Search along with Simone. They are here today connecting patients with clinical trials, and they will be showing their website. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Stephen. And as Stephen, you're coming up, for anyone that does not yet already know, the restaurant, room, are up just calls to the left. Very important for us today. We do have a light lunch afterward. Oh, yes. And we do have a light lunch. Please do stick around to enjoy mingling with everybody else, getting your questions asked. I gotta find yours. That's it. And as always, in the new facility, we are not allowed to have any liquids or food in here. So please don't bring any of the lunch stuff back in here. Even if you have a bottle of water with you right now, please don't even open it during the time that you're in the auditorium, just out of respect to the requests that we get from SPP. And so with that, good. And just use the arrows here, right? And if you want the laser pointers, say right when it's okay. So I'm giving a presentation about is that one up? Low? Let me check back up. It's the same. Hello. Okay, well, I just completed my participation in a clinical trial here at UCSD Moore's Cancer under Dr. McKay's group. I was in the step-up trial, which involved testing enzalutamide and binary androgen therapy to see if it would reduce the DSA net. Well, I went out of that clinical trial. That was a phase 2. And so I got interested in finding out more about these clinical trials, especially now that I'm now in the metastatic castrate-resistant club, which is, we've done everything we can, and it's spread everywhere, and we can't stop it. Days. So I went in online and I did a lot of research, and I'm going to talk about my results. So when you talk about clinical trials, every medication or procedure that you saw in the earlier presentation started out as a clinical trial. and it passed, so I got put into what they call the standard of care, which is what your doctor says, oh, you've got this and this and this, so we're going to do that procedure. It's part of the standard protocol. But the clinical trial is where those things originate. And if we didn't have clinical trials, we'd be in trouble. And of course, you can't do clinical trials without patients. I mean, and of course, you wouldn't need to do clinical trials without patients. So I think we're the prime force behind clinical trials. The when you go into a clinical trial, you have to volunteer, and normally, or quite frequently, it's brought into you by a doctor that you may be under the care. But you may find it independently online and call up the investigator and say, "Oh, I got all those things. I should be participating in your thing." And so if you're trapped with limited insurance or a medical doctor that doesn't want to give you advanced risky treatments potentially, this is your way out. Sign up for one of these clinical trials. Now, people who are earlier on in their course of their battle against prostate cancer probably are not that interested in doing a clinical trial. It's mostly people like me who are further along. I've been fighting prostate cancer for 14 years, so it's now something that I'm interested in. The driver behind clinical trials, or the actual motor that conducts them, is the clinical cancer centers. Now, we have a very good cancer research center here in San Diego, UCSD Moores, and they do probably around 40, they've got about 40 clinical trials underway, and about 20 of them are recruiting patients. And if you match up with the criteria of one of those trials, and I'll show you how you find out about them, then you might want to participate then. But if you look through all those trials, it's very possible that none of those fits your needs, doesn't address your case, or you can't get in. So you may have to broaden your scope. You may have to go up to UCLA or San Francisco, or you may even have to go out of state to the East Coast or the Midwest. And sometimes you may not even be able to find one there. You may have to do medical tourism and go to Germany or to Australia. Like early on in the radiation therapy development, theranostics with the lutetium that led to the Pluvicto that we've now got part of the standard of care. It was being done in Australia and in Germany before it was ever licensed to be done in the U.S. Fact is, I think I remember back a few years ago, we had one of the speakers who came over from Europe who had done lutetium theranostics in Germany, and he was going to UCLA and show him how to do it. So if you've got the money and the time, you may want to go there. And there's still even more advanced treatments originating all the time. And now the other big driver behind these is the pharmaceutical and biotech companies. This is where a lot of the money comes from, because it takes a lot of money to conduct clinical trials. Another source of originating clinical trials is philanthropic organizations such as the Prostate Cancer Foundation or American Cancer Society. These guys do a lot of clinical trials where there's not going to be a drug that you could patent at the end of it. That it's more like procedures or off-label use. Like there's some drug that a doctor has found that it was developed for, say, heart or some other treatment, and he tried it on prostate cancer and it seemed to yield some results, so he wants to get it tried out as with a full clinical trial so it gets brought into the standard of care. And these guys, the philanthropic organizations, they are the ones that have to sponsor those because drug companies aren't interested. It's not going to yield a patentable result. And of course, the other players are the government agencies. There's the FDA, which has to regulate everything that goes on in a clinical trial. There's the NCI, the National Cancer Institute, that does some funding of early stage investigation and maintains the databases of ongoing trials, clinicaltrials.gov, where we find all the information about clinical trials that help us find it. And this Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, they get involved because the results of the clinical trials has to go to them, so they decide, well, this shows it's good enough to be part of the standard of care, and we make it part of Medicare insurance. So after they complete a clinical trial, the results go to them, and you may have to wait a year or more before they put it under Medicare and decide that some new drug is now part of the standard of care. And lastly, the Department of Defense has also got an interest in prostate cancer research. They have a program of prostate cancer research.
Let's see.
This is the view of the clinical trial world as seen by the pharmaceutical companies. You see, here's we're part of the drug market. See, there's not people out there. The drug market is going to buy their drug and returns revenue. And down here in the clinical trial, they have the clinical trial center. You may notice that there's one player that's not on this board. There's no player called patients. It's all the clinical trial center is the drug market, the government attract shareholders. So the pharmaceutical companies are really in it to money. I mean, if they can develop a really successful drug, they'll be happy. Well, did you look at the, I did research and I found a study that showed about the financial results that oncology drug companies get. And they said they get superior annual returns. Oncology drugs yielded an estimated 26% annual return. And you don't get that on the stock market. And some of the reasons why oncology drugs provide higher return is they have clinical value because they provide survival benefits that keep patients alive longer and not just quality of life improvements. Now, this pays off in two ways. One, like enzalutamide, for example, increases the life expectancy of
MCR patients by maybe a year median, and that means they get to collect their $10,000 a month from the insurance company for providing you with the medication, and that's a big payout. And those clinical trials are expensive, but they get the money back. I did find a couple clinical trials that are just ending that look very interesting to us. They're not recruiting, but I may be reporting in the newsletter in the near future about whether they were successful or not. Let's see, there was one by an outfit called Candle Therapeutics. They're doing a phase 3 trial, which means it's very near to being clinical practice on something called CAN 2409. It's an oncolytic virus immunotherapy combined with radiation therapy on localized prostate cancer, which means if you don't have any metastases, and but this is a like a immunotherapy or and they also had this study with placebo controlled, which means that some of the people that participated in it may have got candy or white pills instead of the medicine. It was a matter of rolling the dice. So when you go into this kind of trial, you should be aware that you may not be getting it. They have to provide at least a minimum the standard of care. That is, if the standard of care, for example, is enzalutamide, they have to give you that. Plus, they have to give you the new medication that may improve or not improve your chances of survival. Let's see, there's a Johnson & Johnson, which is another big player. They have an amplitude study, which is evaluating something called Akiga, which is a PARP inhibitor along with abiraterone and prednisone. And that's for HRR gene mutated metastatic castrate sensitive prostate cancer. In other words, if you're like me, you moved along, but you have the right kind of gene mutation in your tumor, you might qualify for this trial. Of course, it's over now, but the results should be interesting, and your doctor will want to look at genetics to see whether this will apply to you. And if he doesn't get your genetics, you won't know about it. Another big player is Pfizer, and they have something called a MedPro-1 phase 3 trial, which is another phase 3 trial means it's close to being clinical approval if it's successful. And this is a something called mevrometostat, or EZH2 inhibitor. And this is only applicable to somebody who's had abiraterone previously. And it's supposed to have been completed by December 2025. If this is successful, it could be another big payoff drug for them. Now, this shows the various phases of clinical trials. You start off with the preclinical or phase 0, and they put in 1 to 5 million. There's not much patient involvement here. The patients come in usually in phase 1, and this is more of a let's try it out and see if it kills you before if it's safe to use in humans. A lot of times these phase 1 trials, this is the first time the drug has been tried in humans. And unless you're really far along, you probably won't be participating in one of these trials. and that costs about 1 to 4 million, and it has 10 to 30 participants. And they're looking for side effects, safety, and what's the best dose to use. Phase 2 is looking at the safety and the side effects, and see how well the treatment works. And this might be somewhere between 20 and 50 participants. Phase 3s are the big ones. These cost $50 to $100 million to conduct. And they're looking to see how well the new treatment works compared to the current standard. And usually they'll have a couple arms where they're saying, oh, and if you're in this arm, you get this treatment. And if you're in that arm, you get that treatment, and so forth. There may be 3 or more arms. And they're looking for safety and side effects, and maybe hundreds or thousands of participants. And at the end of that, if the results are favorable, if the results yield positive survival compared, or even recurrence, time to recurrence compared to the existing standard treatment, like when enzalutamide came in and they proved that it was better than abiraterone for castrate-resistant cancer. So it sort of pushed abiraterone off the shelf. And now enzalutamide, it's become the standard of care. And so this is the goal of the pharmaceutical company. Once they get the approval and they get patents from the patent trading office, they got a 20-year license to manufacture the drug and sell it. And depending on exactly the characteristics of the drug in the market, they may also get exclusivity. That is, they don't even have to license it. They could be the only ones that sell it and pretty much charge whatever they want. Like enzalutamide is now going, if you didn't have insurance and you wanted to get it, cost you like $12,000 a month. And so that's licensing approval. But then you move on into phase 4, because a lot of times side effects take a long time to show up. So if you don't keep tracking all the side effects and benefits in the long term, you may miss out on things. So the drug companies will continue to conduct phase 4 trials.
So, but let me ask you, what you're talking about there is when they got a new drug. What UCSD does is they already have a drug and they're trying to study whether it works better or not, right? That would be about study here.
That would be a phase 3 trial. They have to keep statistics. Everything's got to be done according to FDA regulations, and they have to keep statistics. They have to publish the results in journals. They're peer-reviewed. And so if you read those papers, then you find out what kind of results they're getting. But everything moves pretty slowly when you're looking at a life expectancy of like 3 to 5 years, which is the current life expectancy for people in my position.
So, Stephen, would you say that for most of the audience that it's going to be a phase 3 study that they enter into? It seems like
phase 3 would be the most likely study, yes.
And do you have an idea of, if there's, say, 1,000 preclinical trial attempts, what percentage of each one goes on? Because like I could easily see like companies are just throwing anything at the wall to see what sticks, but maybe only 1% of them get to the point of a phase 3.
Yeah, well, this is not pocket change to me. It may be pocket change to the drug companies. This is kind of a lump in your pocket, and this is you're going to reach for your wallet to get those. So the drug companies have to have microphone. The drug companies have to have a long view of things and be willing to throw a lot of drugs up and make a lot of investments before they get the big payoff.
Do you have a Q&A session, or is this ask questions?
This is my process chart, and I have a big block called patients. So we want effective treatments which come out of the clinical trials. And now after I did this, I looked at the chart and I said, one clear that I left off was this insurance companies and CMMS, because they're paying for most of these treatments and they have to be convinced that it's part of the standard of care and not risky experimental treatment that you're going to get. And this is where the clinical trial says, yeah, we've established that it's a good medication or a good procedure and should be part of the standard of care. If you're around oncologists long enough, you'll hear the standard of care phrase, and oh, that's not part of the standard of care. And that's why you may want to go to the clinical trial, because you want something else. So there's the government regulators, and they're maintaining the trial database, which the patients have to look into to find the clinical trial. And then they could contact the physicians down here who are conducting the actual clinical trials. So why would you want to get into a clinical trial? Well, you want to access new or potentially better treatments. You want expert medical supervision, and say, for example, you're an HMO and you can get a better doctor without paying for it and you don't have the money. Reduce treatment costs. A lot of times in these clinical trials, the medication is paid for. Like when I was in the step-up trial, they paid for my enzalutamide and Abra, and they paid for my testosterone shots. And I went to a special pharmacy at UCSD called the research pharmacy, I think it was called, in the Wars building. And I picked up my medication there, and there was no charge for it. I just had the sign, which is very nice. Another reason is you want to contribute to future cancer research. You may think that you're nearing the end, but if by participating in research you can help other people earlier on learn about new treatments that could help them, that could pay off. The other thing is, like I said, a lot of times people are trapped by their healthcare arrangements. Their doctor isn't maybe the top prostate cancer specialist, and they don't have access to go to whatever doctor they want because of their insurance arrangements. Okay, so let's talk about the major domestic sources of where you find out about clinical trials. One is clinicaltrials.gov, and that's the motherlode of information about primary U.S. Local trials. Although I did research in Canada, they used to have their own database up there, but they had shut it down about a year ago, and now they on their website they refer you to this database that say all our trials are registered down here. If you want find out about local trials, there's a UCSD Health and Genesis Research in Encinitas. Both conduct clinical trials. There's another national center, National Cancer Institute, which focuses on cancer at cancer.gov, and they have listed clinical trials that just focus on cancer. And when you search prostate cancer in that database, you can get, it's easier to find what you want than going through this massive clinicaltrials.gov, which has every kind of disease you could think of registered in it. There's also major cancer centers beyond our local UCSD Health Center. And outside of California, there's MD Anderson and Memorial Sloan Kettering are the big names. And then we have search engines which help you find things in this huge database maintained by the government. And Sparrow Search is one engine that I found, as that you'll hear about next.
Hey, Stephen.
Yes, just
We want to clarify though that's actually not the right website, correct?
It's sparrowsearch.health.
Not the .com .health.
got hell. Oh, sorry about that.
It's okay.
For Sparrow Search.
Sparrowsearch.health. This is patient only, and it's a pretty good search. A screen lets you enter your data in and find health trials that may be applied to you. And there's another online search engine which is more physician oriented that your doctor may want to use, called triallibrary.com. And it's not nearly as easy to use as Sparrow Search, but it's much more clinical oriented. It uses a lot of clinical terms. The main advantage I found in this trial library is that they include a screen for genetic information, which if you have, a lot of the newer clinical trials are using genetic information and will screen, like, for example, the one I mentioned earlier is testing people based on their genetic signature. And then the international operations, there's a engine for Australia, Europe, and Japan. The Europe engine is nice because it allows you to sign on and get what's called RSS subscription. So you can say, I got this, and this, and I'm looking for any new trials that pop up. So if you've got the money and the time and you're willing to travel to Europe, and none of the cancer treatments in the U.S. help you, you might want to look into going to Europe or Australia, because they tend to be seeming, from what I've seen in their trials, they are a little bit farther out on the bleeding edge of particularly theranostics than the U.S. Okay. So, steps to find a trial. First of all, you got to understand your condition and treatment history. You got to get all your records together and find out, like, what stage you're at, what your whether you've had ADT in how many years, and what your genetic signature is. And then you search trial databases with your specific criteria. Then once you find clinical trials, like I said, if you find one in at UCSD, it'll have a bunch of eligibility requirements. You got to go through those and say, oh, I don't have that, or, oh, I got chemo, so I won't qualify. that sort of thing. And that doesn't pop up on the initial screen right away. And once you've gone through the eligibility requirements, they'll have exclusion criteria and inclusion criteria, and you've got to meet all the inclusion criteria, and you don't want to meet any of the exclusion criteria. And if it looks, then you might do additional research on what they're planning on trying out in the literature and see if it looks like a good possible solution. Maybe discuss it with your oncologist. And then if that looks positive, then contact the trial coordinator for screening. And they'll go over the same requirements and get all your information and confirm to their satisfaction that you satisfy as a recruiting candidate. Now, this all has to be done in the matching time window. Usually these trials come online and they may be recruiting for a year or sometimes even less. So you got to find out about them right away if it's possible. You don't want to read about a trial after it's over and say, "Hey, that I could have done that one," because then you got to wait for the next phase to be completed and it to become a standard of care and be accepted by your insurance company, and by that you may be dead. Anyway. After you contact the trial coordinator for screening, then you'll get informed consent documents, which may be several pages of legalese that, well, when I got my informed consent documents, I fed it into ChatGPT and I said, what are they really signing me up to? And it gave me a fairly understandable summary of what the requirements were. And of course, you also want to discuss your options with your healthcare team in terms of how participating in the trial may impact your current prostate care under your existing position. But it's possible to go into one of these trials completely without signing up or signing off from your existing position. I found it a lot easier I was at Scripps at the time. I saw this step-loss trial coming out. So I moved my doctor over to Scripps, from Scripps over to UCSD. And UCSD has got some really nice things about it and some things that really bug me. But they do have the big clinical trial database, and that's where all the research is being done. So that I found that was the easiest way for me to handle the situation. But again, there are some people that can't do that. I'm lucky to be on a regional Medicare, so I can go to any doctor I want pretty much and get treatment. So that's how you find a trial. Okay, so this in summary is what I've talked about. And we have valuable resources in San Diego that you really should try and use if possible, because I don't know about you, but I don't like air travel anymore. And discuss the participation with your healthcare providers and check clinicaltrials.gov and use an engine, something like Sparrow Search, to find on the new trials that are looking for recruits. Okay. So, any questions? Yes?
Thank you for the useful information. Thank you for the useful information, Stephen, and all the good information you give with the newsletter. So thank you very much. And I was interested when you said you were in the enzalutamide study, and as a result, you were put on enzalutamide instead of the abiraterone. Am I right?
Well, I was on abiraterone before I got on this trial, and the step-up trial, they were running enzalutamide down one arm. I think it was arm A, and arm B was they alternated between the testosterone shot and the enzalutamide shot dosage. So we switched out of abiraterone because it wasn't working any longer for me.
Is that the only reason you switched, because it wasn't working, or did you get different side effects?
No, it wasn't. The PSA was starting to go up even when I was on abiraterone.
And then the enzalutamide changed the scene.
Yeah, they found that the enzalutamide controlled it better than the abiraterone had.
And the fact that you didn't have to pay $12,000 a month, was that because you were on the study?
Because I was on the study.
So if you were to go on enzalutamide and not be on the study, would you be just qualifying based on your medical insurance?
You have to look at the details of the conditions, acceptance conditions.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Stephen, I'll walk around to Mike if you want to use that mic there. I could go.
Thank you. Really great presentation. You gave some really valuable information about clinical trials that results recently came out and they were positive. Is this going to be in the newsletter?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Also, Aaron, I think, alluded to this earlier. Do you know what the general percentages of success of these clinical trials?
I wish I knew.
It's pretty low, though, isn't it? If I understand it correctly.
Well, apparently, it gets whittled down. They go through the phase 0 trials, and it's got positive lab results, which means like in a petri dish or something that kills cancer cells. And so then they try phase 1, which is generally micro doses, and what's positive there. So you start off with 1 to 5 million. And if it gets through those phases, then you get to the phase 2, where you start getting real results that tell you whether it's really going to work. And then phase 3, where you say, is it really better than what we have now? So each one of those phases gets you more information about how useful the new procedure or drug is going to be. And there's a lot of trials where they go through phase 0 and then never go to phase 1. And then phase 1 and never go to phase 2. And I don't know what those percentages are. I tried to research that, but I couldn't find any data online.
Yeah, so many companies aren't even going to present their failures.
No,
There's also
as an engineer, I found that information on failures was the hardest thing to find.
it's one of the biggest things we should share. Let's have one last question, and I think you want to question, and we'll move on.
Hi, I'm Camion here with my dad. Two things. One, I tried Sparrow Search, and that was very helpful for me in other areas of the cancers, but not so much for my dad, who's fighting castrate-resistant metastatic. We did the genomic testing, and he has the gene very prevalent, RID51, and also the BRC1 and 2 that are more remote, but still there. I looked up the olaparib study that you went against the enzalutamide or the abiraterone, so Zytiga and Xtandi. Dad was on bicalutamide for a long time from the progression of 2018 and did fantastic on it. But the doctor then decided to put him on Xtandi or enzalutamide. The PSA and testosterone went nuts. So Dad went and got a test and went down tremendously with bicalutamide that he had still on hand. The doctor wouldn't re-prescribe it, so I'm looking into finding this study that is concluded, but I can't find out beyond the study, how do you find out if the doctor is going to allow that drug, and does Medicare allow it? How do I go beyond that clinical trial step? Is that a question I should ask offline?
Yeah, I can't really answer that question right now. I couldn't say that I was doing searching. I was gonna, if I had time, I was gonna go through a example, can't clinical trial that was being done at UCSD. Was accused cabozantinib and nivolumab, and that was to fight against metastatic castrate-resistant cancer, and that's in phase 2 trials right now, and I think it's recurring. And that was use of what they call it, tyrosine kinase inhibitor, which is combines with a checkpoint inhibitor, and this they think could help people like your father. I could give more information on that.
Thank you.
One thing I'd add is this might be a great question for Dr. McKay. Given the extensive genetic details that you have, additionally, trying to find a second opinion from a doctor who is willing to prescribe it. Yeah, I mean, especially if you look at old clinical trials and say like, oh, here's a doctor who actually was part of that clinical trial. Wonder if I could just go and get a second opinion that would, allow them to be more likely to give you that particular medication. Some of these doctors don't necessarily have to strictly go by standard of care. Dr. McKay for me looked at me and said, it's not fully standard of care to do 2 years of ADT, but with how young you are and with some preliminary information coming out, we're going to give you 2 years of ADT. And I think that it was a good idea for
Genetic information. Trial Library is a good website to use.
Very confusing and frustrating to work with those. Just say,
Yes,
and very sparrows. They're
you might need a doctor to help you use that.
All right, thanks. And more questions we'll take offline afterwards, but let's move on to the Sparrow Search demonstration.
Thank you, Stephen.
Okay, Stephen, great job. We're really good. In terms of the profits of the pharmaceutical companies, I think it's important to keep in mind that many clinical studies fail. Drug development is extremely expensive, and companies lose a lot of money on drugs that don't get to market. So I think it's important to keep that in mind, the failures as well as the successes. Okay, a question for you. How many of you have considered clinical trials, or what's your feeling about them? Have you explored them? What are some thoughts? Anybody, Steven?
Cool. Yeah, I participated in a clinical trial, and I talked to the nurse and the skiing agent, and I sort of felt like I wasn't given enough information. I did research online and found articles about the treatment. They gave me more information than what they were telling me. So I sort of felt like I was treated like a piece of meat as far as the actual clinical trial people.
Pleasure. Okay, anybody else? Yes.
I don't have any experience with clinical trials, but I look at it by intellectually. It's like if I've been committed to some sort of treatment, I want the treatment. I don't want the panacea or the bus.
Yeah.
The placebo.
Import coin. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing about his step-up trial. When I was a pilot, I said, I want arm C. That was the treatment. And he said, no, well, you may get arm B or RNA. And no, I can't promise we try it yet.
You don't. And should I look at it in a placebo room
Right.
and waste the time?
Right. Sometimes studies have crossovers, which is if you were in the placebo group, you're able to cross over to the treatment group later if it's been successful. So you want to look at for that. Yes.
But when we spoke to my husband's psychologist, it seemed like it was it's fragmented because our oncologist said, well, you're undergoing treatment with us. Let's just wait and see. He didn't really want to bring in the chemical trials in parallel to what we were doing with skew treatment. So we felt like we were really on our route. If we were going to pursue clinical trials, choose up house and the whole doesn't or map books.
That may be the case. Unfortunately. Okay, let's go ahead. Thank you for inviting me. Aaron especially, great job. The communications, and thank you for organizing this program at Clinical Trials. I'm Teresa Gallagher, the CEO and co-founder of Sparrow Search. I have a lot to cover, which is why I'm going to be speaking quickly. We connect patients with clinical trials, and there's the email address is always going to be something at sparrowsearch.health. So Stephen, to go to the next slide. I ordered that in there. Okay, this has been a period of rapid innovation in medicine, as we all know. However, to get these discoveries from the lab into the clinic requires clinical trials, which prove the efficacy of these developments and their safety in humans. However, patient recruitment for clinical trials, before I get to the demo, this is just a big picture of patient recruitment, then I'll get to the demo. So it's an ongoing challenge. That graph is actually the number of new studies that have been added to clinicaltrials.gov each year. Okay? It's huge. And so with every new study, we need people to participate in that study. Problem is, we're not giving them fast enough. We're going to other countries. It can take 2 years to recruit for a study. Okay? That's 2 more years that you don't really have, you don't want to wait. So our goal at Sparrow Search is to encourage people to participate in clinical trials by increasing their awareness and making it easier for them to access studies. Okay, the typical approach to patient recruitment for clinical trials, that's what we call it, patient recruitment for clinical trials in the pharma industry, is that a pharma company will place an ad. They use social media to find patients who fit the criteria, the eligibility criteria for this one study that they're recruiting for. So I'm sure you've seen these ads on Facebook. Okay, and a more recent trend is that a pharma company will mine electronic medical records in order to find patients with the characteristics for that one study that they are recruiting for. Has your doctor ever talked with you about clinical trials? This is a question for you. Anybody? Yes? Okay, good. Okay, most don't. The 71% is the percentage of doctors that don't talk with their patients about clinical trials. Okay, I believe that patient self-referral is an untapped source of clinical trial recruital. If you are looking for a clinical trial, you're probably going to be referred to clinicaltrials.gov, which is very, the whole point is that this was not designed to be a search tool for patients. It's a registry of clinical studies that has been mandated by the government, and it's very difficult to parse through. Okay. Another limitation of clinicaltrials.gov is that it only lists the eligibility criteria for studies. And let's say there's over 60 prostate cancer studies currently recruiting within an hour of here. So you're going to look at all 60 of those studies and go, eeny, meeny, I guess no. It's just extremely difficult. Okay, we actually use AI to match patients to clinical trials based on a study's eligibility criteria and the patient's clinical characteristics as measured by a survey that they complete. So Stephen mentioned eligibility criteria are key. Just because you see a study and it looks good, you want to be in it? Chances are you may not meet the eligibility requirements, and for the inclusion criteria, you have to meet every single one. And as he said, for the list of exclusion criteria, there's just one that you could be excluded on, you're out. So this is the key for you to looking at clinical trials. What a major key. Okay, this is on clinicaltrials.gov. You can see that there's a lot of studies that are currently recruiting. this is an important point to note here that there's 404 sponsored by industry, but there's a lot of other clinical studies going on. And you have to look carefully because you might want a treatment study. You want a treatment, but these studies may be basic science studies. So you want to look at that. Okay, another important point is that if you look at clinicaltrials.gov, not all of the studies in there are classic clinical trials that we might think of as, you randomized into certain groups. One group receives the drug treatment, the other group doesn't. No, it's many different types of studies are in there. Prevention studies, you might want to, I really encourage people to participate in clinical trials or at least to explore them because we have a problem. We're not getting people into the studies. We're not getting them in fast enough, and that's hurting us. And I think, there's a lack of awareness of clinical trials. So help yourself and help others. I mean, my husband was recently diagnosed and we have 2 boys. I mean, I'm going to get him into a study when he's ready so we can help our boys. Okay, since January of this year, trials are just coming along. 61 added to clinicaltrials.gov just since January. Okay, I thought this study was cool. It was interesting. It's a study of it's recruiting. We have to look at where it's recruiting. I think it's like Puerto Rico or someplace. But anyway, look and see where it's recruiting. And it's a study of a surgical technique to help prevent stress urinary incontinence after prostatectomy. So I thought that was pretty relevant. Okay, final point on these slides here, which is that we need your help. We want Sparrow Search to be to work for patients as well as it can and more. Okay, we can change it. We can modify it. So our director of partnerships is here today, Simone Camilleri. And Simone and I are going to be doing some beta testing of Sparrow Search. We encourage you to talk to Simone about this. It could be fun. It's only one session. There's some small compensation and would really help us out. So let's go to, so I want to end the biz and go into the internet. My husband's a computer scientist. He's also my co-founder, and he's the tech guy. Okay. So we need to go back to the beginning. What's up?
Sorry.
Somebody was just asking Bubble Mike.
So he architected the the AI and all that kind of stuff. And I'm the public health and clinical trials person at body education, so I did that part. Okay, so about you, okay? Sparrow Search is intended for all medical conditions, but our what we're calling our beta testing at sparrowsearch.health, which is where you would write to if you want to help us out by beta testing. So this is a beta, and it's for prostate cancer only. There's over here, you can see that I would like you to also write to us and let us know how it works for you. We want all kinds of comments as many as we can get. Okay, so how are we going to use this? What is this all about? There's 2 ways you can use it. The way on the left is kind of a standard clinical trials finder approach. And the one on the right is taking into consideration whether or not you meet the study's eligibility criteria. That's again in the United States. The first password was the orange stripes. They're all based after my husband's shirts. And the old shirts, and that was blue dots. That was blue stripes. Anyway. And now it's green dots. He does not wear green dot shirts. Okay. Fine. So final trials near me. You can see that the clinical history is not completed. Okay. So let's do this. Okay, I am interested in only a treatment study. And I want a study that is recruiting or not yet recruiting, which means that it will be soon. And it is sorted by distance. The studies will be from my zip code, which is 92130. So let's look at more filters here. Okay, study designs. I want it to be an interventional study, which is where you put into groups and one group gets the drug and the other doesn't. Okay. There's also one of these filters has to do with whether it's randomized or not. So you want to click that, but we're not going to do that right now. I want a drug treatment study.
Can I just try one thing? I want to see if I'm able to enlarge. This could be valid. Not guess. Sorry, but
Okay. So here's studies in order of their distance from my residence. And let's this is all the studies. We use the database of clinicaltrials.gov. So we downloaded that. That's what we're using as our database. So let's get to page 2. And what looks interesting to me here? Okay, this is a PARP inhibitor. So I'm going to look at this study right here, serocarb. Maybe that's a new PARP inhibitor. Haven't heard of it before, but maybe you have. So let's take a look at that. And over here, you can see that you can save the study, email it to yourself, download it, or print it. Up here, we can see that it's a recruiting study. It's a treatment study, a drug, phase 3, sponsored by AstraZeneca. Okay, these dots or these circles are yellow. That means that we don't know if you meet that criterion at this point because you didn't complete the clinical history questionnaire. But you may still get a lot of value about, doing the search this way. So let's look at where it's being offered. And these are the places where it's being offered. That first place looks like it's pretty close to me. So I'm interested in that location. So I'm going to press contact. Note that you are not contacting the sites yourself. Because if you've had any experience in clinical trials, you contact the site, they may not get back to you. Or they'll get back to you like 3 weeks later, if any of you have had that experience. So we do the connecting for you. So, okay, I'm trying to contact the study. And I can't. Okay, the system won't let me. It says that you need to complete the questionnaire in order for your information to be forwarded to the study. Because we're not going to forward or connect a patient randomly. We want to tell the sites, here's this patient, here's a list of what they satisfy and what they don't. Here's information about them so that we can continue with that process for you. Okay? It also wastes your time to go to a site directly because you might go there, like travel for a full day and find out that you're not qualified. So we kind of help inform that process a little bit ahead of time so you get a better sense of whether or not you're qualified. So let's go to, okay, let's try it the other way. Okay, bind trials let's go up top, actually, my clinical history, which is the questionnaire. Okay, complete your clinical history questionnaire. Okay, how old are you? My husband is 63. Type of prostate cancer do you have? Adenocarcinoma. And then, okay, why did we ask the questions we asked? These are the most common eligibility criteria in clinicaltrials.gov. They're also the ones that we can ask you easily and you can answer. We can't ask you about your creatinine levels. I mean, I guess we could, but, this is why we chose these questions. What was your most recent PSA score? Was 5. Most recent testosterone levels, 49. Most recent Gleason score was 8. God, it's Jesus, so I have to bend over. Okay, did it spread? Okay, yes, it spread. Try to use these more simple words instead of didn't metastasize. Okay, it spread to my lymph nodes, my pelvic lymph nodes, and my brain. No, I don't want brain. Did I click on both or brain?
Or both.
Good, that's what I meant. Thank you. I need to. Have I had any treatment? Yes. Radiation? Yes. And the explanations of terms are all in there, as you can see. Have you had radiopharmaceuticals? No. It's not yet. Have you had a prostatectomy? Yes. Have you had TERP? No. I thought the heart used this and you see seeing. Okay.
Can you see? So that's more.
Have you had cryotherapy? No. Have you had HISU?
Oh, it tells me.
Have you had an orchiectomy? No. And again, there's a reason for all these questions so that we could include or exclude you. Have you ever taken any of these medicines? ADT. Okay, I have taken Lupron. I know what it's called. Informally. Are you taking any of these hormone drugs now? Yes, I'm continuing to take ADT, is what that question was. Did your doctor ever tell you that your cancer was hormone resistant? Yes. Going to need to change the wording on this. Hey, have you ever taken any of these drugs? These are second generation anti-androgens. I have taken enzalutamide. Have you ever had chemotherapy? No. Have you ever taken any of these drugs? These are PARP inhibitors and immunotherapies. And no, I have not taken any of these drugs. Have you had a heart attack in the last 6 months? No. Okay, why are we asking all these hard questions? It's because the pharmaceutical companies in clinical trials, they want to bring in people that are as healthy as they can get, aside from their prostate cancer. Okay? They don't want them to be functionally impaired, like I can't work, I can barely get out of bed, you know. They don't want them to have a second malignancy. No. Serious heart disease? No. Now, I'm not saying this is true for every single study, but these are very common inclusion and exclusion criteria. Did you have a stroke? Oh, and by the way, this is a trick. Did you have a stroke in the last 6 months? Well, just if you did, they just waited another month and, try the tryout again. I have another story on that, but I won't get there. Okay, did you have any of these heart conditions in the past 6 months? No. It's extremely common on the eligibility criteria. Now, people get scared of this. This is, did you have very high blood pressure, like 160 over 100? Not just if you had hypertension, okay? Don't worry about it. Are you unable to have an MRI? No, that's not a problem for me. Did you ever have HIV or AIDS? Now, that could exclude you from some studies, okay? But it also may depend on the study if it's controlled or not. So, I did not have HIV or AIDS. How active are you? Well, let's say I can work, I can sit at a desk, but I can't mow the lawn or whatever people do. So they call on me. Okay. How many months do you think you have to live? It's a silly question. I don't like it. But the reason I wrote it was because some studies, because the study is probably going to be going on a long time, will say you need to have a 10-year life expectancy. Some say 5 years. Some say 6 months or a year. So those are the most common ones. So I'm just going to write 5000 months.
Well,
I don't need to do the math. It's good enough for the system. Okay, I don't need to know how many years that is. Okay, now this is the part where you go get a coffee because it takes too long. We're trying to shorten it. But anyway, I apologize, but it will come up. So talk to your neighbors. Say hello if you're
we asked Brush.
Yeah, go for it.
I noticed you checked off enzalutamide without the abiraterone. Is that like it?
You need to have taken enzalutamide without having. Oh, so you could have taken both. It'll handle both.
No, you abiraterone first and then the alpha-enzalutamide, and then you would check off both.
You could check off both. So you're saying that it's not possible for people to have taken enzalutamide without having first taken advert?
Well, I'm not an authority on that.
Yeah.
Or I guess that's the answer, yeah. You know?
Maybe. I don't have a food answer on that. Yeah.
Sure, I'd say if you're recently going into the advanced stage, you probably just go straight to enzalutamide. I don't think they're putting you on abiraterone anymore.
At $12,000 a month?
Okay, so let's see what the results are here. I want my results sorted by distance. And unfortunately, this is a bug in the system, but I really only want treatment studies. And I really want the ones that are recruiting or soon to be recruiting. And I only want the ones that are interventional and a drug intervention. I don't care about prevention right now because I want treatment. Okay, so let's go down this page. So a red circle means that you're not eligible for that study based on your answers. The yellow circle means that you may be eligible. We just don't have enough information right now to make a determination. So you will find that you're ineligible for a lot of studies, which that's okay. They're not appropriate for you. You may have hormone-resistant cancer and therefore hormone-sensitive. Okay. So let's look at what if this really works or how does this work. So let me go to
Yeah, I'm good.
okay, let's get to that study of the Canadian Synthetic Shark inhibitor AZD5305 on page 2 and see what's going on there if I may be eligible for that study. It looks like I'm not eligible, but the question is, why am I not eligible? Okay. Again, it only takes one red mark for you to be excluded from the study, which is why at this point, we don't need to know about all those crazy inclusion criteria. So let's see that this study is for individuals with hormone-sensitive prostate cancer. And based on my responses, I have hormone-resistant cancer. So there. Again, a lot of these are indeterminate, but that's okay. When we design the questionnaire, we want to focus on, questions that are probably going to exclude trials for people, because I think that's helpful for them, as well as for the sites. Okay, so let's go look at one that was indeterminate. And actually, let's look at the locations. We saw the locations for this one before. This is maybe UCSD, but maybe not. There's a lot of independent clinical research sites around. Okay, so an email was sent. I pressed on contact and an email was sent to me and to the clinical study site. And along with the email, again, comes this list of do you meet that you saw. A list of all the criteria. You meet this one, you don't meet this one's indeterminate. Okay, to use best and take hands. So it was one more kills.
There are multiple sites for some of them.
And this is a bug that I have discovered, and I apologize for this bug that I have to keep inputting the study purpose and the recruiting status when I say go back to all of the studies. Okay, good. And I want it sorted by distance, which is always the most useful, 92130. So let's go find a study that is indeterminate. Okay, this is not a mistake. But anyway, Aaron, what time is it?
20 minutes to 12.
Oh, okay. Well, you guys don't want to stay here till the bitter end, so I'll just shorten it. But basically, I'll try to finish as quickly as possible, which is like 5 minutes. So, when you get to one that's indeterminate, I'll just give you an example. Okay, here's an example. It's not the one I was looking for. But also you can see across the top that this helps you to see that this is a phase 2 study. It's a drug study. It's Fudan University, so it's probably being done in China, is the sponsor. And it's a treatment study. So here, the green checks are fine, but you don't have any red ones indicating that you don't meet a criteria. So we can't make a decision. But as I said, we're improving the system so that, we won't have so many indeterminate cases. So let me just wrap up here. And, actually, one more point, which is that, okay, what if I'm getting sicker, okay? And so I can go to review my clinical history and change anything. So let's say I am not feeling well. I used to be able to, go do desk work, go fool around on the internet. I can't do that anymore. My health has gotten worse. Okay? So we updated your health status and you get a different set of clinical trials. And what you will find probably is a lot more reds that you're not eligible for many more studies if you've gotten less healthy. So I'll let that do its thing. Okay, final remarks, which is we also have a learning center on the web with articles. We also have an article in clinical trials, which is really cool because we turn it into a podcast, so you can listen to the podcast on like the complex stuff about clinical trials. So kind of cool. We also are developing an interactive chatbot that will help guide you through the survey. Final heads up is that there are 300 additional studies that are not yet in our database that we are putting in the database. It's not as easy as it sounds to put them in the database, but that should be finished in about 2 weeks, that those studies will be there. And this is, let's sort this by distance, and you will probably see a lot more regs because you're not eligible because you're sick, or unfortunately. Okay. Beta testers, again, I'd like to put a call out for beta testers. It's fun. Take much of your time. And what would it entail? So basically, do you want me to talk? Good, yes.
So basically, we're going to set up a Zoom call with you, have you share your screen, and have you just go through the platform. And we want to see how you use it and maybe ask questions if you're having trouble finding things. We just want to make sure it's, patient-centric and it's easy to use.
Yeah, it's all about the flow. And again, I want your feedback, positive, negative, neutral, suggestions. Anything that you would like to give us would be really helpful. So thank you so much for inviting me to be here today.
Again, thank you for coming back again to show us the updates. It does look like an extremely useful tool. We'll take some questions.
Thank you for that demonstration. It was very helpful. I'm curious, do they have a database where you could put in your information and say when there is an appropriate clinical study available, then they can reach to me versus...
Well, I think on what we're doing, I think if you configure the clinical history questionnaire first, so that we have that information on you. And obviously this is a one-time thing, but it's not intended to be a one-time thing. Like, we'll let you know when new studies come up that may be relevant for you based on your characteristics. So this is, a lot of clinical trial search emails are just like, thing to end the survey and it says, you're not eligible for anything, goodbye. And that's the end of it. So we want to be very sticky. We want to keep people coming back and on this.
So if you logged in a second time, it might say, here's things that have changed since last time.
Oh, in terms of the studies? That's a good suggestion. It doesn't.
That's what I was.
If that was your question.
Otherwise, you have to redo.
Yeah, the only way that we would do it is to send you email information on new studies. Yeah, but that's a great picture. So it's not regrets. Okay.
Uh, just, just following that example that you showed us, that you worked through, you ended up with the trial sponsored by Fudan University in Shanghai. Now, how accessible would that be if that is the hit that fits my situation and I want to get also that clinical trial? That being a whole continent away, what would I learn? At that point, what would I learn about my being able to get into the trial in China?
Okay. So the question. So you're really concerned about how I can really get there or get into the state. Is that
Well, the situation is that use your database and it tells me that that is a study that I should consider.
right?
What's the next step and how feasible is it? Because that was a very good pick to see how far you can go and how feasible would that be for me to go to China and participate in.
Yeah, well, first of all, this is on the clinicaltrials.gov, which is a U.S. Government database. So most of the trials are probably going to be within the U.S. There's some that are out of the country. There are some in China, Australia, etc. So our job is to facilitate the communication of your data to the clinical trial site and not Wuhan, wherever it was in China, and I don't know about the rest. I know that there are companies that help facilitate people. Like there's one company called Greenfire, take care of transportation and everything else. So I would probably be looking to hand off to one of those companies that's their specific business.
Well, as I that coin is the assumption correct that Tulane University is looking for candidates wherever they may be from? And that definitely, if I have that hit, I would be considered, potentially considered as a candidate for a clinical trial at Tulane University.
So I have a question. Sorry. So that trial came up when you did a location search, like trials close to me. Was that a local lab that was doing clinical trials for, the labs of China? Because that was like it's right.
Well, all of these, when you go into locations, the actual location where the study is being conducted. If the nearest site that came up was in China, then it's not being conducted anywhere closer than past.
No, it was actually like
Only one time.
The only one, then that's it. No.
Sure. But it is possible for the same clinical trial to have multiple geographic locations. And I had a friend that actually was, I think we're like Vertex Pharmaceuticals, Gilead. They were actually traveling to Brazil to interview all the patients, but they'd also go to Salt Lake City for the exact same clinical trial. It's just they had to go to different centers to find enough people.
Yeah, a phase 3 study can involve tens of thousands of people and be done in 50 countries. That's what we need to do to get the people. The number of people that we need. Yeah.
Just a quick question. Quick question about the Sparrow Search. When you go to sign up, it says why register, and then if you click on that, it says coming soon. Is that part of your beta test development?
It shouldn't say geez. Yeah, it must be on the state.
Okay, it says coming soon, and then by registering, do you retain all of the history of your cancer?
Yeah. It's in there. And so you just log in and then you can update anything that you might guess.
Yeah, let me Professor here first. I didn't know. Oh, I thought you did. Oh, that's it, sir.
Okay, just elaborate on that last point. Are all trials local, or it sounds like a single trial can be executed in many different locations and through some sort of collaboration amongst the various medical providers and institutions. And is that what's reflected in the database? Will it look for the location that's closest to your zip code and identify that? Is that reflected?
Yes, that's exactly true. So what the pharma company does is that they hire these what they're called clinical research sites to run the studies for them, and there won't be many sites. But just a side point here that came to my mind: physicians at Scratch, they don't know what prostate cancer studies are being done at UCSG. This happens. Physicians aren't aware of clinical studies that are being done. I just thought I'd add that in there. Okay.
Other questions? Anyone's back here?
Diesel.
Oh, I heard in touch with Gina at Kaiser.
Oh, come up to me afterwards. The question had been how to get a hold of Gina at Kaiser. Come up to me afterwards. I'll give you her email address. Okay, back.
Yeah, I'd also be curious if any of these nurse navigators help you to find clinical trials as well. You go to them and say, hey, I'm interested in a clinical trial. What's out there? I know, I was curious. There's studies, clinical trials for alternatives to ADT, because I know people don't like taking ADT. So there's tremendous amount out there.
All right, let's take one last question if we have one. Oh, I guess we got all the questions answered. Yeah, okay, one last question there.
I have a question to you. If you're willing to make a commentary now or at our next meeting about the threat to that entire enterprise, because NIH, FDA, DOD are all under attack about cost cutting, blind cost cutting, and some of these studies, especially longitudinal studies, if they get aborted, that is going to be a tremendous damage to this enterprise.
Yeah, it's hugely important. In fact, my son mentioned to me, Mom, do you think clinicaltrials.gov is still going to be there? So we had a huge in clinical trials. We had a lot of FDA initiatives and guidance on diversity in clinical trials. Well, that was pretty quickly wiped off of the internet. So we no longer have the FDA mandate for diversity in clinical trials.
I wonder if you can also, what's the new term for scratching the website to, download all of the data out of clinical trials before it does disappear, just like the census data disappeared.
That's had to be a related point. We didn't think of that. My CTO is skiing right now, so
Yeah. To add a little comment to what you said, somebody asked the same question to UCSD at the patient summit last weekend, and they're just like, we don't know what's going to happen. And it might suddenly make these clinical trials in China, Europe, and Japan suddenly more accessible. That might show up now. All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Another round of applause for Worker for Don Kate.